Title: The Silent Town. The Road to Nowhere. The last gas station was miles behind him. Jack Turner checked his fuel gadget, hovered dangerously close to empty. The road stretched ahead, flanked by towering pines, the sky above darkening with the weight of an approaching storm. His GPS had stopped working an hour ago, glitching out before freezing on an unfamiliar name, Black Hollow. Jack had never heard of it. The radio crackled, and for a moment he thought he caught the sound of whispers, but when he turned the dial, there was only silence. Then, out of nowhere, the sign appeared. Welcome to Black Hollow. The wooden surface felt strange beneath Jack's fingers, rough, yet oddly warm, as if it were breathing. The letters, though faded, seemed to pulse slightly, as though freshly etched. A faint metallic scent clung to the air, and as Jack traced the words, a chill ran down his spine. He pulled his hand away sharply, realizing the tips of his fingers were damp not with water, but something thicker, something dark. The letters were faded, but something about them seemed wrong. The wood of the sign was old, but the paint, though chipped, looked fresh as if it had been redone recently. The closer Jack looked, the more he realized something unsettling. Beneath the words, faintly scratched into the wood, was another message. You belong here. No population count. No county indicator. Just those 3 words, worn and faded. Jack had no choice but to drive forward. As his car rolled past the sign, the storm seemed to pause. The air stilled. The world held its breath. And then, the first house appeared through the mist. 2. The Town That Watches. Black Hollow looked like a town forgotten by time. The houses stood untouched, their wooden walls weathered but intact. Storefronts bore names in old-fashioned lettering. The streets were too clean. But there were no people. Not a single one. Jack parked on the side of the street, stepping out cautiously. As his feet touched the pavement, he noticed a strange sensation. The ground felt softer than it should, almost as if it were breathing. The subtle rise and fall beneath his feet sent a shiver up his spine, like standing on the chest of something slumbering just beneath the surface. Each step he took caused the pavement to shift slightly, a muted, rhythmic pulse matching his own heartbeat. He crouched down, placing his hand against the ground. It was warm, too warm, and then, for just a second, it exhaled. As his feet touched the pavement, he noticed a strange sensation. The ground felt softer than it should, almost as if it were breathing. His footsteps echoed against the empty buildings. He knocked on a door. No answer. Another. Still nothing. Then, in the distance, he saw movement. A figure standing at the end of the street, barely visible through the mist. Jack called out. The figure didn't move. Then, slowly, it turned its head too far to the side, twisting at an unnatural angle. Jack felt his stomach drop. The streetlights flickered. When they came back on, the figure was gone. 3. The Unseen Residence. Jack should have left then, but he didn't. His phone was dead and his car wouldn't start. Black Hollow didn't want him to leave. A soft creak sounded behind him. He turned. A window that had been closed before was now slightly open. Jack took a step forward. The shadows inside the house shifted. Then came the whispers. They weren't words. Not really. More like echoes of voices long gone. Then, a sign above an old shop flickered to life, buzzing with dim neon light. Black Hollow Inn. Rooms available. Jack didn't remember seeing the inn before, but now, its doors were open. Waiting for him. 4. The Silent Hosts. The inn's lobby smelled of dust and aged wood. A register sat open on the counter, a single name scrawled in ink. Jack Turner. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't written that. Then came the bell. It wasn't a normal chime. It echoed in his skull, the sound distorted, stretched, as if played backward. For a moment, he felt dizzy, like the very air had shifted around him. A small silver bell on the counter rang by itself, and behind it, a woman stood. She hadn't been there a second ago. She was dressed in old-fashioned attire, her hair pinned neatly, her eyes dark and depthless. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Jack stepped back, but the door behind him was already closing. A gust of cold air swept through the room, carrying with it a whisper that came from everywhere and nowhere. You shouldn't have come. V. The Rooms That Remember. Jack didn't remember climbing the stairs, yet here he was, standing in front of room 206. The key was in his hand. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the room was warm, almost inviting. A bed, a dresser, a single window that overlooked the silent town. Everything looked untouched except for one thing. A framed photo on the nightstand. Jack picked it up. His heart nearly stopped. It was him, standing in the middle of Black Hollow. But the picture was old-faded, yellowing at the edges. He turned it over. A date was scrawled on the back. The 14th of October, 1952. Jack dropped the photo, his breathing ragged. The whispers returned. Louder, closer. From the mirror, across the room, something stared back at him. It wasn't his reflection. 6. The door that won't open. Jack ran to the door. It wouldn't budge, but something else happened. A faint knock sounded from the other side. Slow, deliberate. Jack's breath hitched as he pressed his ear against the door. A voice's own voice whispered from the other side. At first it was faint, distorted, like a radio signal cutting in and out. Jack leaned in closer, heart hammering in his chest. The voice repeated, this time clearer, but with an unnatural echo, as if layered with something else. Don't open it. Then, a pause. A long, sickening silence. The voice spoke again, but this time, it didn't match his movements. His lips hadn't moved, yet his voice still came through the door. Don't open it. And then, after another agonizing second, it whispered one final time, you already did. Don't open it. The whispers became a chant, the words still unintelligible, but urgent, desperate. The mirror rippled like water, and a handpail, too long, too thin pressed against the glass from the inside. Jack slammed his fists against the door. It was no longer wood, it was stone, a wall. He turned back. The hand in the mirror was now a face. His own, mouth open in a silent scream. Then, the room blinked out of existence. 7. The next visitor. The town of Black Hollow remains. The inn still stands, its neon sign flickering in the endless fog. The register at the counter still sits open, waiting for the next name to be written. The ink in the well beside it bubbled faintly, as though something unseen had just dipped the quill. The feather trembled slightly, the tip hovering just above the blank line, waiting. Then, almost imperceptibly, the quill shifted a fraction of an inch, as if testing the air, as if deciding on the name it would write next. The pages were old, yellowed, yet one slot remained blank, as if waiting. The ink well beside it was full, the tip of the quill resting perfectly on the last used line, as if someone had just stepped away. And in room 206, behind a picture frame on the nightstand, a new photo appears. A man, frozen in time, his face twisted in horror. Beneath it, a date, the 14th of October, 2023.